Let me ask you something. What if the very thing you claim to want most in life, freedom, is also the thing you secretly fear the most? You say you want to be free, free from the system, free from your boss, free from expectations, free from the cage you feel trapped in. But when freedom actually shows up, when the door of the cage swings wide open, you hesitate, you freeze, you tell yourself it's not the right time, that you don't have the money, that you don't have the confidence, that you're not ready. And maybe, just maybe, that's because deep down you don't actually want freedom. You want comfort disguised as freedom, security dressed up as liberation. You want the illusion of freedom, but not the burden that comes with it. Because real freedom, it's terrifying. The German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer once wrote, "Freedom is not the right to do whatever you want, it is the power to do what you ought." That sounds noble, even inspiring, but think about what it really means. Freedom is not endless pleasure. Freedom is responsibility. Responsibility for your choices, for your mistakes, for your failures. And most people don't want that. Here's the uncomfortable truth. It's easier to blame society or school or your parents or the government for the way your life turned out than to admit that you, right now, have the power to choose differently. Because if you admit that, you can no longer escape responsibility. This is why, as Nietzsche observed, most people would rather remain last men, comfortable, obedient, safe, entertained, than become the overman who dares to create meaning in a meaningless world. Think about it. You spend years complaining about how school crushed your curiosity. You say work kills your soul. You say social media is making you dumber. But then, after the complaining, you still scroll. You still show up to work you hate. You still waste hours numbing yourself. And then you wonder why life feels so empty. Could it be that the cage is not entirely built by society, but also by you?
Let me tell you a story. In the 1950s, psychologist Solomon Asch ran a famous experiment. He put a group of people in a room and showed them simple lines on a card. It was obvious which line was the longest, but everyone else in the group had secretly been instructed to give the wrong answer. When it was the subject's turn, most of them, ordinary people, conformed. They gave the wrong answer, even when their own eyes told them the truth. Why? Because the pressure to belong was stronger than the instinct to be free. And isn't that still the case today? You know what feels right, you know what's true, but you go along with the crowd anyway. You repeat the slogans, buy the things, chase the trends, not because you want to, but because the fear of being alone is heavier than the weight of living a lie. Freedom is lonely. Freedom isolates you. Freedom means losing the approval of others. And so most people would rather live shackled by invisible chains than walk alone in the open field. Plato warned us about this thousands of years ago in his allegory of the cave. Imagine prisoners chained to a wall, forced to stare at shadows. The shadows are not real, but they are all the prisoners know. Now imagine one prisoner breaks free and escapes into the light. What happens? At first, he's blinded. It hurts. The truth is overwhelming. But eventually his eyes adjust, and he sees reality for what it is. Now here's the twist. When he goes back to the cave to tell the others, they don't thank him. They don't say, "Wow, you're free. Show us the way." No, they hate him. They mock him. They resist. Because the shadows are safer. The shadows are comfortable. And that's why freedom is a curse as much as it is a gift. Because once you step outside the cave, you can never go back. And yet the people inside will never forgive you for leaving.
This is why Machiavelli once wrote that there is nothing more difficult to carry out, nor more doubtful of success, nor more dangerous to handle than to initiate a new order of things. Because when you claim your freedom, when you decide to live differently, you threaten those who remain in chains. Your very existence becomes a mirror of what they are too afraid to do, and people hate being reminded of their own cowardice. Think about the times you've seen someone break free. A friend quits their stable job to start their own thing. A relative decides not to get married, or not to have kids, or to live in a way that doesn't make sense to society. What do most people do? They criticize, they gossip, they label them as irresponsible, foolish, selfish. But what they really mean is, I could never be that brave, and it makes me uncomfortable to watch someone else do it. Here's the paradox. Freedom is what makes us human, but it's also what we spend most of our lives running away from. The existentialist philosopher Erich Fromm called this the fear of freedom. He noticed that people often escape into authoritarian systems, rigid traditions, and comforting ideologies precisely because they cannot handle the anxiety of being free. To be free means to live without guarantees, without certainty, without safety nets. And the human soul, fragile as it is, longs for stability more than truth. This is why totalitarian regimes rise. This is why cults exist. This is why people stay in toxic relationships, because the pain of captivity feels safer than the terror of freedom. But let me ask you this. What if the pain of staying chained will one day outweigh the fear of breaking free? There comes a moment in life where the illusion of comfort crumbles, where the job that paid your bills suffocates your spirit, where the relationship that kept you from being alone becomes a prison, where the habits that distracted you become addictions. And in that moment, you will face the choice, remain a prisoner or walk into the blinding light of freedom. And here's the secret. Freedom never arrives as a thunderous announcement. It arrives quietly in small decisions. It's the moment you say no when everyone expects you to say yes. It's the moment you delete the app that consumes your soul. It's the moment you start the project, not because it's safe, but because it matters. It's the moment you stop outsourcing your life to systems and ideologies or traditions and take ownership of your existence. That's freedom. Not glamorous, not always triumphant, but real. Of course, it will hurt. Of course, you will lose things. You will lose people. You will lose the comfort of excuses. You will lose the sweet safety of belonging. But in exchange, you will gain something far greater, the right to live a life that is truly yours. And that is why, in the end, freedom is worth the fear. Because the only thing more terrifying than being free is realizing at the very end of your life that you never really lived at all. So I'll leave you with this question. Do you want comfort or do you want to be free? Because you cannot have both. And if that thought scares you, good. It means you're closer to freedom than you think.